could we get ones that are like the little tiny boom mics with the mute button? It's not something we have to figure out right now. It's you want to call it? No? It went straight to voicemail, Jeff. The battery in my van actually died while I was picking up the daughter. Yeah, Kevin and Scott. Good evening, Scott. Did you do that before you have an app on your phone that tells you, okay, take vitamin D, vitamins, and then and stop drinking caffeine at this time, and go to sleep now, and it eases you into it for like a week before. Oh yeah, I'm not gonna blow my week before. No way. Let's get real. Yeah. That's great. That's what it's supposed to do, right? That's while we still can. Yes, yes. All right. All right. We're ready. Why don't we get started whenever you're ready, Jeff? Yeah, sure. Okay. The time is 6:33. I'll call the Newcastle Planning Board meeting to order. Today is March 20th, 2025. Second thing on the agenda is any amendments to the agenda. Do we have any amendments?
I do. I had mentioned that it sent out kind of a late edition. And then I talked with the applicant today, he was not that can we table it. So I apologize that I missed. I don't know why that application didn't stick in my head anyway. But fortunately, he will be here next month. So he requested that we table it. So assuming that you're good with tabling it.
Excellent. All right. So we'll take new business item A off the docket for tonight. Item number 2, review of minutes. So we'll do these individually. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from June 27th? June 27th,
Yes.
2024. Because apparently we never took action on them?
Yeah, I think there was delay and then I never brought him back, so.
Good enough.
Oh, you know what it was? It was that Ben, Luke, and Kevin are the only 3 that can approve it, and so.
We'll do it next month.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that one.
Moving on to the minutes from February 20th, 25. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Moved, seconded. Do we have any
conversation, discussion, comments, corrections, errors, omissions,
That
etc.
one, Scott, Ben, and Wanda can vote on. Okay. Lucas was absent, Tyler was absent, and Kevin is not here, so
Okay,
if, assuming all three of you vote affirmative, we can accept it.
no changes? Seeing no changes, no discussion, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, all opposed, all abstaining. 1, 2. Thanks, guys. Old business, tax map 12, lot 4, 15 Hall Street, Blood and Sons, temporary structure for longer than 3 months. This is a continuation of the application from it was last month? Was that just last month
Yes,
that we were talking about this?
yes.
That feels like 2 years ago. So much has happened. Great. So last month we had requested a little bit more information, as I remember, just for the sake of the record keeping for the application and clarity.
Yes. Yeah, what I gathered was the board wanted a little more information, and also the ordinance doesn't provide a whole lot for temporary structures in terms of when can, should, or should not the board extend it. I provided a memo to probably got into the weeds a little bit too much on it, but there may be a conversation about, maybe the board may want to have a conversation about adding some guidance for you all in the ordinance, because right now it's pretty limited, but I think what I will tell you, I'll just briefly, the things that I think the board has to decide is, for anything, is do you have enough information to know what you're reviewing and understand what we're talking about? That's just kind of a broad for everything. And then a determination of whether the standards are met. In this case, it's demonstration that the standard is met, and in this case, it's is there a need? So we've got all the information of like where this is going to go, what it's being used for, things like that. The only real, I think, question is there a need? I went into like, what is Merriam-Webster's dictionary of what is need?
Went deep on this one.
Yeah, it just I was trying for, what can you be considering? And does the applicant lack something desirable or useful in the use of in this? So I guess here, the two findings the board should consider are: would Blood and Sons LLC be lacking something desirable or useful without the temporary structure? And if so, has the applicant demonstrated that this need is more likely to exist than not exist?
Can you just remind us again where that language or interpretation is coming from in the core zoning code?
Yes. I think so.
I gotta find it.
Put it in here because it is pretty limited. Where did I go? Oh, the planning board may grant an extension of up to 1 year based on demonstrated need. That's Article 410 in the core zoning code.
Right.
So pretty limited based on the demonstrated need.
Based on the demonstrated need.
So I think what I put in here, I think, was that Mr. Blood had said basically it's to cover construction materials that you have and want to use once the construction season, once you're able to construct something. Yeah. Which I imagine you're waiting until
we can get a crane.
Yeah.
Which right now is not happening.
No, I can't. Yeah. So but I think just to refresh everybody's memory, this was a temporary structure that Kevin, in his role as CEO, approved for 3 months, and really the only thing the question before the planning board is, should it be allowed for more than 3 months? I believe that the reason for asking for basically to extend this through December was just for a cushion. You're not gonna, it doesn't sound like you need it through December, hopefully.
Yeah, once we have the building, the main building up, then we should be able to remove the temporary structure. It won't be needed,
Yeah,
because we'll go from having a couple hundred square feet up to 3,000 square feet.
right.
So,
So it's just a little bit of cushion on the timing, but. So I think that's what I got.
Yep. Deep, deep dive on demonstration of satisfaction and definition of need for sure.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. That's all we had to go on.
You're right.
That's literally it.
Right.
But I think those criteria are obviously met. I think at least for me, the bigger consideration was that we had that location on a map showing where it would be. We can go on the record with the permit application. We have it, so that it wouldn't be something that exists in perpetuity, and we could refer back to it at a later date for enforcement. Should it be left up longer than a year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And just as we do with all other applications, we require full documentation or as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, Wanda, that was also from last meeting, I think your concern as well, if I can
Yes.
remember.
Just that we. Everything we needed so that if it went beyond that the power to.
So does anyone else have anything to add? So just a weird one because we're not approving a permit. I think we said the last time, we're not approving a permit. We're just, we have this weird nebulous process of approving an extension of an existing permit.
Right.
Which is a process that isn't really fleshed out.
Yeah.
So,
Which the original permit, and per the reg, I mean, per our code, it's only 3 months, and it seems like that's not an extremely long time if you need a temporary building or something.
yeah,
So, I mean, it makes sense that somebody might have to go beyond that.
Yeah.
especially if the 3 months ends in the middle of winter.
Exactly.
well, that's what we were saying last
Right.
was you put it up in, September. Are you gonna take it down in the middle of winter?
Yeah,
No. Who's gonna do that?
I mean, it's not
Yeah, it's,
possible in a lot of cases to
Yeah.
to remove something from
Right.
6 feet of snow.
Yeah, no one's gonna do that.
That's, I think we did talk about, and this is not really directly related to the application, but we may want to figure out some more mechanisms of dealing with temporary structures that give the code enforcement officer maybe some more flexibility or tools, and then also planning board.
Yeah.
To make it more practical, basically, make temporary structures more usable.
Right.
And that may be easily done or more easily done if you attach your use to it. Like what were you gonna use it for? If you just pop it up for the summer to having your key up for something. I mean, that's a quick, potentially 3 months and down, but for other stuff, so maybe we're gonna try to look at extending it, maybe it's extended by some list of uses that might go with it, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting idea because, our applicant here is in the boat business. But there's a difference between a temporary structure for a boat, say, in a commercial application than there would be in a residential application. Often.
Yeah.
People put up these little temporary, hoops for boat
Garage
storage.
forever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it turns into a garage forever.
Yeah,
The boat sits in there. I'm gonna work on it someday.
Yeah, Yeah.
10 years later, the boat's rotting to
Well,
pieces, the cover's got rips in it,
Yeah.
you know?
18 months in.
Right, so, I mean, there are different, I think. Without going too crazy, you're absolutely right, I think that
Yeah.
tying it in some way to different uses, categories of uses maybe.
Yeah.
Might not be a bad way to approach it without, writing off the page.
Yeah.
We don't need to go crazy about temporary structures, but it sounds like some more guardrails might help.
Right. It seems like it's a very good thing to have in the code. There's plenty of things that you want to be able to allow through that temporary structure, but probably just needs to be filled out a little more to make it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think tying it to uses is,
Certainly, if you're building a structure, it makes sense that something like that would be very useful to keep stuff under and.
Yeah.
And that would truly be a
Right.
temporary structure that would be probably needed for more than 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then there's also the line between a temporary structure and an additional structure.
Yes,
Right,
right, where.
Which
Well,
is like. I would happily leave this shelter logic up and continue to use it for other things. And permit it as an additional structure when that is allowed on my land, which it is. Theoretically soon to be.
Yeah.
But. It's the same building. It's the same, like, so there would be no reason for me to ever get a temporary structure permit. If it's more difficult to get it, or if I have to come back before the planning board,
Oh, no, we wouldn't know what to do if you didn't show up.
what's that?
We wouldn't know what to do if you didn't show up at this point.
well, I mean, there is difference between additional structures and temporary structures as defined in the code. And the two primary things are size.
Okay,
And screening.
yes, but
So-
we're working on the screening.
Yeah,
And also the size.
There's no screening requirements for temporary structures at all. And there are screening requirements, or there's sometimes screening requirements for additional structures depending on district. And size
Right.
for additional structures, so. And. I mean, additional structures are clearly intended to be permanent.
yeah, I think that
Yes,
we
but
talked about
there
this.
are requirements for what an additional structure is.
So we've talked about that, and I think do we have something cooking for that?
Well, we are cleaning up additional structures now a little bit. There's some changes in there, but I do think that. We talked about trying to. Figure out how to get temporary structures. There seems to be a gap between between additional structures and then like your accessory building.
Yeah.
And what to do about that. That was kind of a separate thing, but I do think anything that any work we do on temporary structures should dovetail with anything that the accessory structures or additional structures do, because I think that you don't want temporary structures, well, you don't want accessory structures to be easier to get than a temporary structure, because then why would anybody get an temporary structure? The whole point, I would think, of a temporary structure is we don't need to worry about screening, we don't need to worry about X or Y, who's only gonna be there for 3, 6 months, 9 months, whatever. So I think that's, I tend to, in other conversations we've had, I like to think about things kind of on a spectrum of like, when do you kind of cross a threshold, but there's always something on that continuum.
Yeah.
Permanent primary building.
Well, and originally, if I remember correctly, additional structures used to, and this was going way back, included a definition that said something like. Additional structures may have either, electricity, plumbing. Heat, insulation, foundation, but only 2 out of 4, or, I can't remember exactly what it was.
Yeah.
It was only like 2 out of 5 of those things could. And a temporary structure can't have any.
So an additional structure may have them, but not must have them.
it couldn't have all of them that would let you then start living in it.
Right.
But could it have none of them?
An additional structure?
Yeah.
No, it'd be a temporary structure at that point.
But only if you take it down in 3 months.
Okay.
Right, yeah. And
So
then,
if you decide, if you don't want electricity in a storage shed. Then it is a temporary structure, but you have to take it down.
well, a lot of, this isn't in the code.
It's not in the
we call
code.
it.
It's not,
No,
yeah,
yeah,
no,
right
it's
now.
not
at the moment.
No,
Yeah.
not at all, no. But I don't know what happened to that, and again, my memory is not perfect. We'd have to go back and look at it. Or we just craft some new language that clearly, you know. Separates additional structures from temporary structures on that spectrum.
Yeah, I
I think it's easy enough.
I agree, I think that. We just gotta get into it a little bit
Yeah.
and.
But for now, you know, all things being what it is for the purposes of this application and our purpose here tonight, I think, you know. All things being equal, tie goes to the applicant with, I see no reason to. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot in the ordinance that forces the board to approve or to reject. It doesn't really give you a
Right.
whole lot, so.
Yeah.
I feel like in the absence of anything, it's.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Right.
Can't really reject, but.
Do we have a motion? To approve?
Yes.
Motion to approve, do we have a second? Second by Wanda. Any further discussion? Any other comments? All in favor? That passes. Unanimously.
Yeah. Okay,
All right,
great. So,
I lost my agenda.
the. Like I said, the new business isn't on. You know, that was tabled, so.
Other business.
Yeah, other business.
Discussion of potential horizontal code amendments, definitions related to lots and frontages.
I'm reading it right now, it's like.
So that's. Which one do you want to look at? The red line version or the clean version?
It's up to you all. I provided the clean version just because sometimes this stuff gets. Yeah, it gets hard to follow, but. This is intended to be a first step. I think Ben, you had mentioned to me, you wanted to get. The frontage zone. Didn't come through in the core zoning code the way that you thought that it probably should. It was really supposed to accommodate what components, massing components and architectural components on the front of buildings.
Mhm.
And so to kind of allow encroachments or whatever you want to call them. And I had been doing, and then also the way that accessory buildings relate to primary buildings.
Or placement on a lot.
Yeah, right, and that right now, basically, the way that I think I read it is accessory buildings, their setback is from the front lot line, at least the front setback is, where really they should be set back from the frontage line, how I've kind of redefined frontage line. So, but all of this stuff is before we start changing things, like we want to nail down our definitions to make sure that they are clear.
So I think a visual aid would be a wonderful thing instead of getting all confused by the definitions.
Yep, I think that's
How
fair.
do you feel comfortable being
I
the?
can certainly do that. Let me
So
pull
this is the period of time when we all just play charades and.
We right here.
No,
Oh, cool.
sorry. Did you get you got the email, go to Michael's email
Oh, and I also did print
From-
some extras.
the 18th.
Does anybody need, I have hard copies of both the red line and the clean version.
Yes, please, I would love some. I have no idea. I
Anybody else? No?
No.
So we want the
Okay.
clean of the
You-
red line.
I'm gonna work off the red line.
Um. So,
Just because I like to, sometimes I like to see what it was.
right, that's, so, and I just want to maybe give a little bit of context for this. My general approach with most definitions is to have them be. I like to have them very broad so that basically things don't fall outside of them. Like if you define a dwelling unit as, and try to put, first of all, you shouldn't have any standards in your definitions because you want to capture. So if someone comes along and says, oh, this is not a dwelling unit, you can be like, no, our definition is broad enough, you fall into what we consider a dwelling unit, and then here are the standards you have to meet. So if you say like a dwelling unit has to have a bedroom with a window and a closet, it's like, well, someone could come along and be like, oh, well, this room doesn't have a closet, so it's not a bedroom, therefore it's not a dwelling. That you don't want to play that game. And so that's where some of the deletions are coming out, is to kind of broaden it so that you're not getting a loophole. And then also the other thing is I want to make sure that you kind of got everything covered. So the definitions like go right up against each other so that there's never a situation where you're like, well, where's the transition to the next thing? So these obviously aren't in alphabetical order. There's a couple situations where we either had two different definitions for what is essentially the same term because it was like in the ordinance as setback rear and as rear setback. I'm not sure if that's actually one of the ones, but obviously we want to clean that up so there's only one definition. And then I just tried to group them so that it would make sense. There are definitely other definitions that are going to come into play as we go through here, like primary road, things like that. I tried to include, the most important ones in on the back there, but anyway, why don't we just jump in and so lot area, lot depth, lot width are just the aspects of the lots. I public rights of way, I publicly dedicated and accepted. Like if it's not accepted, doesn't matter. It's a public right of way, then
Let's go. Can we take them one at a time?
yeah,
Sort of build up our understanding.
Yeah.
Let's start with. Do you want to draw?
I can.
While I read.
Yeah, I can.
Is that cool?
Yep.
I hate to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. I mean,
How's your artistic ability?
it's not terrible.
I don't have artistic ability. I have autistic ability. So,
Not terrible.
We'll see.
okay. So a lot is a as it's defined, is a designated parcel, tract, or area of land established by deed, plat, or is otherwise permitted by law. Which is fine, I think. I'm not sure what as otherwise permitted by law means, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure what a lot permitted by law that's not a designated parcel, tract, or area of land established by a deed or plat would be.
Yeah, well, basically just a designated parcel, tract, or area of land. I think that the important part of the, established by deed or plat or is otherwise permitted by law is really just that it's recorded somewhere and it's your legal ownership is what it's that entity of land that is demarcated somewhere. So whether plat is going to be like our subdivision plans, things like that. If you look at deeds, they rarely have pictures on them and it's just like the meets and bounds. It's something, but it basically is like, this is someone should be able to come in here, and this gets into our, when someone has standing, someone should be able to come in here and be like, I own this piece of land and can demonstrate it is theirs in some way, and there should be some definite, like, even if it is as vague as like from the old apple tree to the big rock, like that's fine, that functions legally. We'll accept it.
My only objection is to the word otherwise,
Well,
because I don't know, I literally have no idea what that would be or mean.
Is there such thing as land that no one owns?
Yes,
It's just there. Nobody owns it.
yes.
Government
it
doesn't
happens.
own it.
It
People
happens.
don't. So
Yeah. Yep. Believe
it's
it or
not a lot because
you-
nobody owns it.
You get what are called GIS artifacts often.
Yeah.
Where boundary lines don't meet up and you end up with weird things. This year we found two. Just in the course of things.
that's
No, what you have to do, in the case of one of them, you literally have to go back as far as you possibly can through the deed, through the deeds. As far back as you can, and then you have to work your way forward, finding any one that may be an inheritor of a direct descendant of the original
Before it was divided.
before it was somehow messed up.
Yeah,
Yes, Jeff.
That's what a gore is. Hibbert
yeah.
Hibbert Gore is exactly
Yeah,
right. Yes.
In the
That's right.
Right.
One
the
resident.
maps.
Correct, yes. Yep, so we found one on Mills Road this year. It's, I think, 20 feet by 10 feet. And it goes back to the 1800s. And then
can you then just divide it between the two bordering landowners? if
No.
it's not usable?
No.
Like,
there's a whole legal process that you have to go through. You cannot just take it. Yeah, it is kind of crazy. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. Can we just say a designated parcel, tract, or area of land established by deed or plat as permitted by law?
by law. Yeah. Because that's what we care about, someone's legal ownership
Right.
of a property.
Okay, so then lot area, the total area contained within the lot lines or boundary lines of a lot, excluding land area within or under public right of way. Let me read that again. The total area contained within the lot lines or boundary lines of a lot, excluding the land area within or under public right of way.
Probably should be public rights of way. That S probably should stay in there.
What do you mean by under?
So
Mineral rights?
what's that?
Do you actually mean under?
Yeah, well, and this is, I'm not, maybe there's a better way to say it, but as far as lot area, if there are some areas, there are some places where the fee simple ownership, the actual fee ownership extends to like the middle of the road, but the public owns the right to cross it and it is a public road. And I don't think for the purposes of the code, we want to include that in the lot area. If it's a private road, which is basically just an access easement, I think we can say, okay, sure, you still get to count that towards your lot area. There's not a lot of situations in this code that you care about lot area. But you could imagine like with septic, for just as an example, if it says you need 20,000 square feet and you've got an access easement that your neighbor can go over your property, that shouldn't be taken out of what you get to count towards your lot area for septic. Private road or a public road, I think is like, okay, the town's probably not giving that up anytime soon. We're not going to count that towards your lot area.
So now that's, okay, let me give you the inverse example. If something is permitted on an adjacent lot when the two lots are in the same ownership, but not in different ownership, and they're divided by a public right of way.
Yep.
Do you consider the right of way a break between those lots or not. And I'll give you a specific example, because I've actually been down this road, unfortunately. Okay. So if we exclude the land under the public right of way, then the two lots would not touch. If we include the lot under the right of way, the two lots would touch. So in our sign ordinance, it currently says that no sign or advertisement may be displayed on a lot not in your ownership.
Not on a lot that's not in the ownership. Okay.
Or on an abutting lot that's in the same ownership, or I'm sorry. You can have a sign or an advertisement on an abutting lot as long as it's in the same ownership. That's how I should say it.
Okay. So that is
Okay.
what the accommodation that's made. I get it.
Does that make sense?
Mhm. Mhm.
So if you own a business, for example, and you have several lots, right?
Yep.
To say you can only have the sign on the one lot that contains the actual business,
Mhm.
but all those lots are in the same ownership. If they're divided by along one of those lot lines by a public right of way, and we exclude that,
Mhm.
then the sign is locked to only,
Right.
right?
So, yeah, that's what you're saying makes sense. I think that this is where, like, what does it mean to abut becomes kind of a little bit of like, well, what do we mean? If you say you have to issue public notice to all the abutters,
Mhm.
does that mean the abutters that are across the street? I think that's one of those things where you're like, well, does it? And that came up on something recently in Damascata, because just as abutters doesn't say within so many feet. So
I would argue absolutely.
I think that's why I said send it to them so that we're covered.
Yeah.
But
I like that. That was pretty. Is that you?
but
So
But is it in a butter if it doesn't touch?
I
Well, that's
think
what I'm saying.
that's-
If we
well,
exclude the land area and we use this definition.
Mhm.
In the review of those.
Well,
conditions,
I think this is where it's like it's going to depend on the definition. So when you're talking about abutters, you could say, you could still count that. You can say abutters are directly across the street. It gets a little bit weird if the lot lines don't quite line up, and how do you go diagonal, whatever. But
let me attack it from another angle. What's the reasoning behind excluding the land under the public right of way? And my argument for eliminating that language would be you're taxed on that.
yeah, well, I mean, look, we certainly can just get rid of the excluding land within or under public rights.
Well, no, if you have a good. I didn't know where it came from. So if you have a good argument, I think, or if we think it's a good idea. We'll
Yeah.
keep it. I'm not trying to like be a devil's advocate here or anything. I'm just.
No, I'm more, I'm just trying to think of like with subdivisions, if a developer comes in and says, okay, I want to do, again, we don't really do lot area for lots.
Right.
So it's not really a huge issue. But I guess it makes a difference whether or not the public right of way is included or not. I'm just trying to think of a situation where it's not like where it's going to make a difference, but where it's going to be really detrimental. I don't think it would be. I think it's just you want it to be. Personally, I just want to make sure it's clear. Are we including it or not including it?
Right.
Isn't the public right of way, isn't it different whether it's a town, whether it's state, whether it's. I mean, there's some that go from the center of the road, some that go from the edge of the road. Who's
Yeah,
gonna track all of that as to where it is and how far back it is?
it would be in the deed is what you would, I mean, and I think the planning board and the town can kind of put it back on the applicant and be like, if you're going to claim that you own to the center of the road, show us that you own to the center of the road. You need to prove it.
Now that's really interesting. Deeds are horrible.
Huh?
So my family owns a piece of land on the Sheepsgate Road. The Sheepsgate Road is a public right of way.
Mhm.
But there's no mention of the Sheepsgate Road or the public right of way in the deed at all.
Mhm. Yeah, well,
The lot existed before the road went in.
right.
The road followed the lot lines. Or didn't, when it was a cow path originally.
Yeah.
So probably the lots came off the center of the road. That's probably how I don't know. I have no idea
Yeah.
how it happened. I'm just saying.
This is, it gets into some weird, there are, and this is new to me, relatively new to me, there are roads in Maine that have an assumed right of way. It's something that's like the state
Yes.
basically got into and said, okay, this is weird. We're gonna give you some generally vague guidance. And
Yeah.
like towns can just assume if there's not records, or sometimes it didn't get written down or the records are lost. And they will say, okay, you can assume that you own, I think it's like 24 feet from the center line. Basically, it's like a 50 or 55 foot wide
Yeah.
road.
They cleaned that up
You
in the
assume.
'80s because there was so many lawsuits about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because my dad had bought a piece of land before the road went in, and when he bought it, it had a big old farmhouse on it.
Mm.
And when he bought it, it was with the understanding that the state was putting a road right through that farmhouse, and they did, they tore it down. So, I mean, obviously that divided that road, but when he bought it, I'm sure the deed was for the whole.
The whole thing.
Thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It's a very interesting thing.
Yeah.
I think going back to your statement about how you want these definitions to be clear in general.
Mhm.
That we eliminate that language.
Yep.
So that it would say something like the total area contained within the lot lines. Wow. Okay, I'm sorry, I have another problem. What's a boundary line?
Yeah, I think that I think is supposed to be kind of clarifying, which I don't know if it's really necessary.
We don't
So-
have a definition for boundary line.
No. And that's
Unless we
where
want to define boundary lines as something other than
lot lines.
a lot line.
Why couldn't it be a deeded lot line? We gotta go back to a deed.
Well, later we want to use the definition of lot area when we talk about virtual lots, and those don't have deeds.
Right.
But I'm thinking a boundary line could be, a water body. It could be a civic space. It could be
But that also makes a lot line.
a water body would not make a lot. Well,
Well, if it's titled, the
Well,
lot line's changing all the time.
Well, I think
Well,
there's a
that's defined.
limit to where you own
there is. That's-
even into the water.
That is the weed.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying is that we either remove boundary lines or we define it.
I say remove it. I say
So-
the definition should just be the total area contained within the lot lines of a lot.
Perfect.
Because we do define lot lines and we just went through the definition of lot, so.
Love it.
Is lot lines of a lot repetitive?
Well, no, I think it's because this is saying like the lot lines of the lot rather than lot lines of any other lot.
Oh, okay,
Right, I mean, kind of, but
it's fine.
I see.
I shouldn't have asked the question.
No.
that's why we're here. That's why we're here.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think we want to have them separated because to Wanda's point, a lot is the legal entity that creates the lot. The lot area is something that we want to have a definition for because we'll use it in other ways later. Not necessarily pertaining to a deeded lawful parcel.
Yeah, and just because we're on this, the definition of a lot line is a boundary that legally demarcates a lot. So,
Perfect. Then I think that we should go with that truncated definition for lot area.
Mhm. Okay.
Lot depth, moving on.
Yep.
The perpendicular distance from the front lot line to the rear lot line. Or if the front lot lines and rear lot lines are not parallel, the distance from the midpoint of the front lot line, the midpoint of the rear lot line. Perpendicular distance from the front one to the rear lot line. From where? perpendicular distance from the front lot line to the rear lot line.
How do you determine the front from the rear? It depends on where you're standing.
Well, no, we have a
That's-
definition of front. Lot line, comma, front.
Mhm.
Any lot line that abuts a public road, private road or civic space. So I think that jives. Lot depth, I think that,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, the only thing I'm wondering is the perpendicular distance from the front to the, really should just be the distance.
Measured perpendicularly.
Yeah, because in that beginning, at least, it's assuming the lot lines are parallel, which means. Doesn't matter where you're measuring from, they're gonna be the same, it's gonna be the same
Yeah, so
distance there, but
change it to something like. The distance measured perpendicularly from the front lot line to the rear lot line. Because we are talking about a measurement of of length. Right?
yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And then, then. If they're not parallel, it's the distance from the midpoint of the front lot line,
To the midpoint of the rear lot line, yeah.
yeah.
For the funky, weird.
Right, so they have like a triangle instead of a line. Okay.
Yeah, and that's, because sometimes the rear lot line can just be a single point, which we'll get to, but it essentially always exists.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, God, I just saw.
And I'll also just say, lot depth doesn't really come into play very often.
Yeah, I know, it really doesn't, so let's move on. Lot width, the total length of the front lot line or the distance between side lot lines at the maximum front setback, whichever is greater, the total length of the front lot line, comma, or the distance between side lot lines at the maximum front setback, comma, whichever is greater. Or the distance inside. That works. Just add that comma.
Yeah, that's, and I just put that in there.
Yeah.
I think that, and that maximum front setback, I believe is the frontage line, which we'll get to, but
Okay, yeah. I am all in favor of removing the definition of building lot. And all references thereof.
okay.
It is confusing.
Yeah.
It is unnecessary.
I think it's a
What do you guys
bit of a colloquialism for lots that are developable, and it makes me really uncomfortable because it's like,
Whether you can build on it or not is irrelevant. We're just talking about a lot.
right, and whether it's buildable or not, whether you can build on it or not, is gonna depend on,
Other factors.
yeah, I mean, you can almost always build on a lot, but it's, what can you build there? Can you put a telephone pole there? Yes. Can you put a house there? Maybe, so. Yeah, so that, and then the corner lot, interior through lot,
Yeah, why did you want to get rid of those?
those, so, and I have some notes that I didn't think that they just don't come out easily in this. The reason I got rid of those was to allow the definitions for, like the difference between a corner lot and I think one version of a through lot where you have like an L that has frontage on one road and another road. Which I can draw, but that. You don't, doesn't really matter what you call it, as long as the definitions and rules are good, they will. It will be handled appropriately. So I didn't want to create this thing where it's like, well, what's the difference between a corner lot and an L through lot? And what happens if there's, just as lots can be really funky, like if you have, this is a road here.
You need a better marker. Do you have a better marker?
See if this blue one works. I don't think yellow is gonna work, so.
I've got a Sharpie.
There's blue.
Blue's better.
Yeah,
That'll work.
that's called a permanent lot.
Exactly.
Okay, so if you've got like a right of way like this,
I mean, you can have lots that, I don't know, someone sold this. Or, you know, there could be another road that's, you know, back here. And maybe this is the lot now. It's like, I don't know, that's not is that a through lot? Is that you know, it has all of these weird things going on. Where, so that what I figured was when this comes into play, it's like, well, what frontages are we talking about? How do you have to treat this frontage, this frontage, this frontage? There's going to be, one of them is going to be the primary frontage, and we'll get into that now, and when we get into like the primary road, but you have a primary frontage, but then you also have to deal with these other frontages, which they're just secondary, they're all secondary frontages. And we do have standards for that, so it doesn't matter if you call it you know, what you want to call it, it's as long as we understand how we deal with this frontage, and and we do deal with it differently than this frontage, and then, oh, now there's a frontage over here, that's okay. Oh, this is not a frontage over here, that's okay. We just know what they are. And then this is gonna get into side lot lines too, which we'll get into when we get there, but does that make sense? Is that like, that's why I got rid of like names for things, unless there's like a waterfront lot. Basis, it's like, it's a lot that has water frontage, but.
I understand, like, when you're talking about the L lot and stuff, how that can be kind of confusing, but to me, the corner lot's pretty basic.
Yeah,
You have two primary roads, it's a corner lot. You have property that are on two roads that intersect,
yeah,
where the other one, potentially you don't, you have two roads, but that you're not at the intersection of those two roads.
yeah, and that's, which you're right, I mean, that's what a quarter lot is, like, this is a corner lot, we know that. I guess for me, I'm kind of like, do we need to define it, because the way that it gets handled is. One of these is gonna be a primary frontage and one of them is gonna be a secondary frontage.
From the perspective of reviewing it for compliance, you're absolutely correct. However, from the perspective of being able to say the creation of these types of lots in these districts are allowed or not allowed,
Mhm.
it would be more beneficial to have more definitions. I.e., I mean, across the board, we want to discourage the creation of insular lots
Right,
with no frontages,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
In all districts.
I think yes. But I think the best way to handle that is to basically not allow. You make it so it's not possible to create them legally. And whether you call it an insular lot or not. So, you know, somewhere there's a standard that says like, you know, your new lots are not allowed to be created without, you know, X or Y. So, I know one of the standards that, you know, you need at least 24 feet of right of way connecting your lot to, and we probably want to clean that up a little bit at some point, so that eventually connects you to the public road network, but that's fine. And the other standard, which came up with fabrication, was it needs to have a certain amount of frontage.
On a public or private road.
Right, yeah, and so that, I feel like just saying that good gets to the point of, you know, what's an insular lot? I mean, we could try and define it, but I'd rather set the rules that basically, like, when we're talking about it, we can talk, oh, this is an insular lot, but not have a definition so that you don't fall into this trap of like, well, this is an insular lot because it doesn't meet that definition. It's like, yeah, but all the standards that are here, you don't meet them.
So you feel that way about corner lots, interior lots, and through lots?
Well, yeah, yes, and I guess part of the. I guess I don't, so like, what's the difference between an interior lot on a single private or public road? You know, an interior lot to me sounds like every lot. Well, not every lot, but like when people think of a lot, they think of what I guess is an interior lot. Because every lot's gonna have frontage along a private or public road. Assuming it follows the code, the way we're talking about restricting. So,
It does allow you to have. Frontage on an easement or right of way, which would be nice. As opposed to an actual road.
right, and I guess that's, you know, within this situation. I don't think we don't really allow you to create a lot that just has frontage on an easement.
Or a right of way. It has to have. Frontage on a road, right?
Right, it has to meet those
Even
definitions
though
of,
the road is only 20 feet long.
yeah, whatever
And
the
there's only
standards
a
are.
right of way that connects the road to the other road.
Right.
You can drive on the right of way, but you have to. Have a road in front of your lot.
So.
Yeah.
You know, I think sometimes these help when you're having the conversation, but they also kind of get in the way when you're like, well, what are the standards around them?
Yeah.
Um.
I
That's,
gotta think more about that.
yeah, which,
It seems to me that these terms are only useful if they have bearing in the rest of the code. I mean.
Right.
If there's no need to define a corner lot in the code, why would you have that there?
Oh, I'll tell you why. Originally, what this code derived from, there was a section called neighborhood standards. Where the creation of new neighborhoods or blocks, other, large scale development or redevelopment. Used these terms extensively.
Okay.
We jettisoned that whole section. When the code was redone. So
now there are terms that.
Were there certain things that were only allowed on a corner lot? As
it was
opposed to
more
any
like
other
if
lot?
you're gonna create a new block. It needs to be platted a certain way. And it would be comprised of these elements.
I see.
And so having those definitions then made sense because they were referred to.
Okay,
which, and maybe they become relevant again if we. At some point, we. Try and dive into subdivision and stuff like that, where you're talking about. Laying out possibly. Whole blocks or.
Yeah.
Neighborhoods or something, so.
Yeah, these lot types, that's where that came from, that was the
Yeah,
formation or creation of new blocks or neighborhoods.
and. But what I have to kind of keep reminding myself is, it's not like we're erasing these, we're taking them out of this ordinance, but it's not like they disappear, so if we need to add them back in because it makes sense with. Something else that we're doing. Totally can.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
And can I just ask a very, very basic question? The case of, how do you decide what is primary and secondary frontage? Say, for example, in that, the lot behind the corner lot, what if those two roads are primary roads that just happen to intersect?
Well, down to
Which
the
one would be
bottom,
Frontage,
yeah, down to the bottom, there's criteria for primary road.
the very bottom?
The road, yeah. In
The last
determining
page,
a
actually.
primary road. For corner lots, through lots, or any lot that abuts more than one road, the primary road is designated by one or more of the following conditions. The road that existed first, the widest road, the road that carries the greatest amount of traffic. When lots front on more than one road and multiple roads meet the above criteria, all such roads shall be treated as primary roads.
So what do you do in that case?
Then that means that,
Your frontage could be
Setbacks.
on either side.
yeah, you
You
have primary
get to
frontages
decide.
on both
Yeah,
sides.
that's the case that.
You
I'm
don't get to
thinking.
decide.
Yeah,
You have to meet requirements on both roads.
okay, yeah. And do you have to legally define what the primary frontage is in the case of that ambiguity?
We do.
And even say a deed?
No,
No, probably not in the deed, and it would be in the application when it comes. Here, and I will say that definition for primary road. Some of the things we're talking about today would affect that, because you wouldn't have corner lots through lot there, but. Like these definitions on the back, I didn't touch, I kind of like had to draw a line
Yeah.
and not, so. It's not like this is gonna have everything lined up nice and clean. Yes. So to your point, like it's still,
Sorry.
there might be other
I'm not-
questions.
yeah, I still
it's a
think
good
it's
question.
ambiguous, yeah, okay.
Yeah, right, and that's, I'm like, all right, we'll address the ambiguity or whatever it is when we cross that bridge.
Right.
But like I said, I had to kind of pick a limit for now.
All right.
So,
Okay, let's move on.
yeah, I did leave insular lot in there because it's a lot that does not have frontage on a private road or a public gateway.
I think we have to have that one so that we can say we don't want them.
Right. Right. And then I also, this may not be necessary, but I did add island lot in here because one of the things I'm thinking about is like, if you don't have, you probably don't want people counting their water frontage, you know, between River Road and the river as their primary frontage. Well, I mean, we can go down that path. But if you're an island, like you don't have a choice. Like that is your frontage, that's your functional frontage. So I did want to make sure that we're like, look, if you're an island, we're not gonna tell you can't build there because there's not a road. You know, your property doesn't abut a road. It's like,
Right.
that'd be silly. So yeah.
They could also draw a 20-foot road on their island.
Right, but do you want to have to build, I figure like that's one of those cases where you are, because I think a lot of the primary frontage is kind of like access. It may not be exclusively, you have to access your property from that, but at least legally, like.
So following that thought process, why did you remove the last part of the definition of waterfront lot?
Building lot that has frontage along a body of water and frontage. Because I think that I imagine there are certain standards. I removed that, because I removed that, I felt like I had to make island lot.
No, island lot makes sense. I'm not arguing that.
Yeah,
At all.
I think when I did that, a lot that is frontage along a body of water, some of it is maybe overlapping with shoreline zoning a bit, but I imagine you want to treat your water frontage differently than any of the other lot lines or road frontage, or, you know, you may want to have standards around that saying.
I just don't want that to be construed as you can have a lot that only has frontage on a body of water
Right, no,
and no other frontage.
yeah, no, and that's, so this is where that standard. I think we should have, we just need to make sure that it's not in the definition, that it's in the standards.
Right.
So when we list out what the standards are for lots. We say you have to have frontage along a road, public or private road. With the exception of island lots.
Yeah, right.
You know, that's where that
Yeah.
thinking came from.
We have existing lots that only have frontage on water bodies.
Yeah.
And not on primary frontages, but I think the creation of new lots. We don't wanna allow that. Condition to continue to occur.
Right. I think, yeah, you want. Ideally, lots that are on the mainland. Have some kind of road frontage, because people have to get to their lot. We could, if we really wanted to. If there was somewhere that's like the roads don't go to, but people have somehow. There's houses there. We could deal with that, but. We would do that in standards, not so much in definitions.
Yeah, that's fine. We just have to make sure they dovetail. So for example, in rural, we say, you know, newly created lots must have 250 feet of frontage along the primary frontage. Well. If we let this loophole pass without saying that waterfront lots. They could say, well, I can create a lot with 250 feet of frontage on the waterfront, and that's my primary frontage, and I don't have to have a road.
Right.
To the lot.
Well, that would then, when you get to primary frontage. The frontage that abuts the primary front lot line. Primary front lot line, okay, primary front line. Any lot line that abuts the primary road. Where there's no road, the primary front lot line is any lot that abuts civic space, right of way, or easement. So it wouldn't be the water. At least according to this definition.
Okay.
Because I think what you're saying is, I assumed that. That. Except for special circumstances like islands. You want lots, every lot to have road frontage, even if it has water frontage.
Yes, I will give you an example of why this is important,
Mhm.
because it sounds like we're being overbearing.
Mhm.
I worked at a house several years ago now in Edgemont. The owner did not want a road. Did not want a driveway. At all. This house was built entirely by, in the wintertime, using snowmobiles and four-wheelers to haul material on sleds down to the building site, and then in spring, construct the building with those materials. They did not want a road because they were fearful that if they had a driveway, they would get robbed. The problem is, of course, if you don't have a driveway, fire and rescue cannot find you.
That's exactly what I was
My
thinking.
personal problem was I was contracted to install an insanely huge, heavy shower door
And you had to walk 500
that I
yards
had
through
to
the woods.
get to the house with no driveway.
Well, I
You
mean,
hope for no rain
Yeah.
and mud and.
And it was up and down ravines and it was insane.
well, you,
But you're not, in here, you're not requiring that they have a driveway, you're requiring that they have frontage on a road.
yeah,
So the house could still be on the river with no driveway from the road to the house, right?
that's, yeah, technically, I think that's true. But at least the property has. Access, there's at least. You can get to the property via,
The edge of the property and then you
Yeah.
can use snowmobile.
Is that? That's a tangent. We'll look at that later.
Yeah.
I am curious, what is a body of water? If there's a creek going through your property, is that a body of water?
I have one of those right now.
well, that's a good question,
Oh, that's a shoreline question. that is
Wow.
Totally nebulous.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, forget it, never mind.
I mean, we could. Define
Well-
that, but it does get into, I don't think we want to do it right now.
Yeah.
No, I'm.
It's a great question, but I think
Yeah.
the argument could honestly be made either way using the current shoreline.
Right, cause I think. Damerscott River. Yeah, body of water, is a huge wetland that's, 40 acres, is that a body of water? We have to, in shoreline, yeah.
Right.
In this, we have to sort that out, but at least right now,
So when I look at this, I think it's a question of the modality of transportation. So if you're on the water and the land is accessible by boat, it's the same thing as having a road. You just have to use a boat to get there, right?
I think so, and that's like. If we don't, the town didn't want to, the town could say like, you're allowed to have. Lots that don't have road frontage.
But you have to have the Coast Guard come when somebody's
Right.
injured, but I mean,
Right. So I think that's where, I don't think it's unreasonable for the town to say like, if you're on the mainland, you need to have road frontage.
Mhm.
But I think that you're right, it's not like. Most of the like little towns around here at some point like, weren't connected, it wasn't Route 1. You got from Booth Bay to Round Pond by boat. Yeah, or a really long walk. But for the most part, like that was the mode of transportation, so having a waterfront lot was. The most accessible, it's not like that anymore.
My dad remembers when there was a ferry instead of there was Captain Bridge.
Very cool. So,
But that too.
Yeah, which is insane to think that in his lifetime, it's gone from that low of traffic to what it is now. That's insane.
And it completely affected the economy, whole coastline.
The whole coastline. Absolutely. Terraforming.
I don't know.
Okay, moving right on. Virtual lot. Potential lot created by virtual lot lines demarked on a plan to show and determine conformance with this code without the act of legal subdivision.
Yeah, I didn't really touch that.
Yeah,
The only thing I took out was potential lot lines, as I said, it wasn't defined anyway, so.
yeah. Yeah,
I have a virtual.
Yeah.
okay, I mean, I think it's fine as a definition. We have other standards for it.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on, page, whatever, 2. Lot line, a boundary that legally demarks a lot. Front lot line, any lot line that abuts a public road, private road, or civic space. I think that's good, nice, clear.
Yeah, and we don't have civic space currently, but it seems like something that. We probably want to accommodate and allow in and.
Well, we have a civic district. So there are civic lands on the actual.
Right,
So I think it's fine leaving it.
that's, yeah, I think we will use it.
Is that out of curiosity? I have civic space on two sides of my land.
Yes, you do.
So I can consider that boundary line frontage,
Well,
because
not,
that would solve all of
Not
my
frontage.
problems.
no, and it wouldn't be primary frontage either.
Any, primary frontage has, yeah, abuts a civic space right away or easement.
Well, and I don't think
Because
we
any
have
lot
civic,
line that abuts a civic space.
but
That's
civic
where-
space and the civic district, I think are not the same thing.
Right.
So something in a civic space, something in a civic district can be not a civic space.
Like you could have the town office, which would be like an office. Which would, but the civic district is, you know. Would be like the rural district, just because it's in the rural district doesn't, I don't know, make it rural. It's not really, it's not quite,
So what is a civic space?
Veterans Park.
yeah, like a park.
A
Public space.
cemetery?
I don't know if it's defined like that. Right,
Cemetery has its own definition.
Cemetery actually has a state definition.
But it's not under the civic space thing, it has to be like,
No, it's not managed through the core zoning code.
Do we claim Harriet Bird as a?
Area word is civic
That would
space.
be civic space.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have much, but that would be one.
Yeah, we don't have a lot.
Town cemetery,
What?
final town. cemetery.
It is.
That's not civic.
Cemeteries are really murky. Yeah,
I mean, it's a public space, right?
Well, there's a lot of private cemeteries on private property.
Well, yes,
But-
yes,
I
but a town-owned cemetery is technically public, anybody can go there.
no,
You have to ask the town permission to go there.
well, I think
it's so murky, and I'll just give you the very brief. It used to be that we sold, the town would sell individual burial plots by deed. So you would get a plot of land and a deed demarking your little, 3 foot by 7 foot. And you got a deed at the registry for that. It is yours. If someone else steps on it, they are trespassing. They can't use it in any manner. Only you can, because you hold the deed.
But you have to maintain it.
Yes.
The family does,
Unless it's a veteran.
and you get a right of way through the town land to your 3 foot by 7 foot
You
plot.
do, yes.
Okay.
But which ones are public and which ones are private? It's a mess.
Yeah, it sounds like a mess.
Super mess.
Sounds really.
Sold a house, sold a house. Now, on this corner of the lot were 7 souls.
Yeah,
There was a 15-foot right of way
along the edge.
along the edge of the property line.
Yeah.
That anybody could, anybody, anytime, anywhere could walk over and visit these souls.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it is, yeah. But again, very murky, we don't have to. Good question, though. If you're interested in cemeteries, speak to,
loophole.
I'm interested in civic space.
we need help with cemeteries.
Benefit him in the
I
future.
like
Yeah,
it.
so if you're interested in cemeteries, we need help in cemeteries, talk to Karen. Okay, we gotta get through this. Primary front lot line, any lot line that abuts the primary road. Where there is no road, the primary front lot line is any lot line that abuts a civic space right away or easement.
Yeah, I think normally it would be. One, normally you're gonna have one primary road. There are situations in this definition that. Would allow you to have two primary frontages, but generally it's. You're gonna have one primary frontage. You have one primary road, which means you're going to have one primary front lot line.
So can I ask a quick question?
Mm.
So lot line, front primary. We can consider that off of a right of way?
Where there is no road, the primary front lot, right lot line is any lot line that abuts the civic space right away or easement. So this is murky because.
The reason I'm asking is because when we're talking about. Frontages and lines and right of ways and subdivisions. I have an example and it would not. It doesn't sound like it would be able to happen in this town. But it happened in another one. And I think that we should take it into consideration.
What is it?
So Hughes Field,
Yeah.
owned by one person.
Yeah.
Let somebody build a house, it'd be easier to draw it there, build a house there, or up front here. And one of these heirs wanted to build on the river. Gave them a right of way, long one, all the way to the river and let them build on the river. This person passes away, leaves the land to these folks on the river. They subdivide the lots. It's not a public road. It's not even a private road, it's a right of way. And all the lots have been created off this right of way.
I'd like to at some point kind of define.
I'm just saying at some point we're gonna have to tackle that beast.
Roads, public roads, private roads. And beyond.
I'm not for or against it, I'm just saying this is what happened,
Yeah.
and it happened recently and not really that recent, like 1994, but. I'm selling a house that has no road frontage, has 17 acres, waterfront, it's gorgeous. And it's, the only way to it is over a right of way that if this person in the very front of that decided, I don't wanna do it anymore. Like that it would cause an issue with the whole thing, then and this was brought up by a real estate attorney. That was like, this is a problem.
Because what their access easement isn't.
It's not a private deeded right away. It's not deeded.
Oh,
The right of way is owned
yeah,
by the property up front,
Yeah, but
So
they
then
must-
it's not really. a
but the
deed
right of way
right
is
away.
deeded to the second house.
it's deeded to this guy at the end.
Yeah,
A real estate
Access.
attorney, real estate attorney, but then they created all the lots
All
off.
these other ones,
Yeah.
and they don't have.
So try selling a $900,000 house off that.
well,
It can happen, but what are you doing? Like,
Well,
how is it gonna happen?
that's one reason why this ordinance does say you have to have a deeded 24-foot right of way.
It would, they
Creating a
would
lot
have
at a
been, they would
minimum.
all considered insular lots by this document, right?
If all you had was the deeded right of way. Yes, I think this would consider it an insular lot. Because you don't really have any frontage.
Right, well,
Because those are the two separate things, and that's the.
and the right of way was actually off of a originally created driveway. That the town had to basically adopt it to make some of this stuff legal.
Yeah. Like that.
Yeah,
And then start plowing it.
and then start plowing,
Yeah,
and there's no
right.
place to turn around but the guy's driveway.
Love it.
Yeah.
That is messy. The thing about, thing about this one that bugs me is that it, it's technically a definition that reads like a standard. It's not a standard. Does that make sense? But it sounds like we're creating a standard. In other words, it sounds like we're creating the possibility of having lots that have no primary front, but that only abut a civic space right away or easement.
That's how I read it.
That's what I'm
The
saying.
definition should only be any lot lines that abut a private road, period,
Of the primary road.
the private.
But then the question becomes, what happens if there's a lot that is already existing that doesn't abut a road?
Well,
But
that's
that's
why
the
you need to
exception.
have. no,
Yeah.
That's why you need to have a definition for, well, one way to solve it would be to have a definition for newly created lot and existing lot. Or legally non-conforming lot, which
Yeah,
we have through non-conforming. Does
right.
that make sense?
That's what I'm thinking about with that second sentence there is legally non-conforming lots that don't have a road.
Okay,
It
then we
would
need to, then what we need to say is, instead of where there is no road. The primary front lot line is any lot line. Instead of saying that, you say. Legally non-conforming lots. Start with that. You say the primary front lot line for legally non-conforming lots. Shall be. Any lot line that abuts a civic space right away or easement. That keeps it as a definition, not a standard.
So, yeah,
It doesn't open us up to the argument for someone to come in and say. What the distinguished Mr. Blood is saying.
Yeah, but then it's also taken care of by you can't create an insular lot, cause it says. An insular lot is a lot that does not have frontage on a private or public road.
Right.
So
That's
So
clean.
that's why we don't want the definition of front primary lot line to say that you can't.
Yeah,
Potentially.
because then you're
Well-
saying, well, you can have your front lot line not on a road,
But that's what I'm saying. This is a definition, not a standard.
right?
yeah. Well, and that's what I mean is. This is not saying that you can have. It doesn't say that you're allowed to create a. Primary front lot line that does not abut a road. It's telling you like there are situations where
But that's a
someone didn't
different
follow the
definition.
rules.
But that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, instead of saying where there is no road, instead of saying that.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Say. Legally non-conforming, pre-existing legally non-conforming lots.
Mhm.
The primary frontage lot line is any lot. And then it's done,
Yeah,
because then it cannot be interpreted as you may create a lot
right,
Off the right away.
right.
off of a road.
Right.
Yeah, away from it, right. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna, I just wanna think about it a
Yeah,
little bit
I
because
agree.
I don't wanna. Narrow it too much when it's like a legally pre-existing, I don't.
I know,
I wanna make sure that we're like, we don't
Yeah.
find ourselves in a situation where it's like, oh, well, it's not this and it's not that, so,
but you got.
but.
Am I misunderstanding something? I mean, you're creating definitions to apply to the zoning code, right?
Correct.
So you're defining an insular lot, then the zoning code can say, you can't have one, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
And there's a definition for it. Is
Correct.
this not what we're talking about here?
That is.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's my
Why you
point.
don't worry
Well, and you
about
could
it.
actually say it in the definition, an insular lot
Yeah,
is a
you
legally
can define something
non-conforming
that's not allowed.
pre-existing
You wanna just
lot.
allow it, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't wanna have the case where someone could argue that because of the way that we've written the definition. It allows for a loophole.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, and I also,
get it now.
Like anything.
I think what,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
You're- what we could do is,
I needed-
we can put this where there's no road
Yeah.
situation. We can put that in as a standard.
Put that in the standard.
Say,
So like Wanda was saying. Lot line, front, primary is simply any lot line that abuts the primary road.
yeah,
And then the second part goes in the standard.
yeah, I think that's, I think that makes sense.
Okay. moving on. Secondary, any lot line that abuts a road other than the primary road. There we go. Clean as a whistle. Rear lot line, any lot line which does not intersect with a front lot line where side lot lines meet at a point, the rear lot line is that point. It's perfect. Don't want to mess with it. Side lot line, any lot line that connects to a front lot line. Love it.
Now, just to think about that does create. That one is, I was like, the definition is so clean, it's great. But there are situations where you end up with things that most people are gonna be like, that's a side lot line, and that these definitions make a rear lot line. Like,
It can't. If it connects to, unless it's a triangle,
well, if you've got like something like this, and then you've got your side lot line, and then it goes like this. Right, like this, and this are rear lot lines.
Yeah.
Only the two that touch the.
This, just this, and this would be, so you could imagine where you could get like weird things that are like, well. All of these follow rear lot line standards, which is fine, we, for the most part,
we
treat
don't really care
rear.
much about the real lot lines.
No.
Usually it's a primary that we're more consistent.
Right.
But he does have a point because
It's a
there are
great
some
point.
really funky lots where technically the rear lot line would be really close to the frontage. Or the primary front lot line. And therefore directly next to an abutter's potential. What would be considered a side lot line. And the rear lot line standards are much less than the side lot lines, especially for setbacks. We don't have setbacks for accessory buildings on rear lot lines.
Mhm.
They're all on side lot.
I think. My suggestion is that these definitions are so clean that we use this as we use these definitions. And then adjust the standards to address things like that, where like, yes, this kind of creates a weird situation, but. It's very clear what a rear, and a side, and front lot line are.
Okay.
Yeah, for now, I think we roll with it. Anybody object?
No, think about that.
I mean, you could make. There's so, I mean, you can't hit every single situation.
You really can't.
No,
you
right.
can't.
It would just be forever trying.
Yeah.
All
I
right,
mean, there's always those weird lots that we're gonna have to deal with, but.
So,
all right.
but I just want to point that out, because it did occur to me, I was like, this is a weird thing, but.
Alright.
You know, so.
So you eliminated multiple lot lines. To keep the clarity?
Yeah, condition where the boundaries of a lot line take an irregular form. And more than one front, side, or rear lot line made, yeah, I don't know, do we need to define what that is? I mean, it can exist, sure,
I think what it was trying to get at was
Is what we were
this
just talking
situation.
about.
yeah, where you have, well, or where there's multiple front lot lines or. But I think that. You know, with the definite mix, by saying like any lot line that abuts a primary road or any other lot, any lot line that abuts a road other than the primary road kind of gets like, great, well, this is how you deal with those, this is how you deal with those.
All right, good enough for now, right? All right, let's cruise through frontage. Step back really quick. Frontage, the area that lies between a building and the front lot line. Now, I like it, it's short and sweet, but the question is, what does it mean specifically? Lies between a building? Do you mean the point of the building closest to the front lot line? Do you mean the center of the building? Do you mean the front facade of the building? What if it's at an angle?
So I think frontage is kind of the vague, it is vague, because when you use. We then define what frontage zone is, and I think a lot of the standards kind of play off of that rather than. The frontage, the term frontage, but we should. Make sure that that is actually the case.
like frontage is just kind of, I think, a big thing where it's like, it's this space here generally. And then the definitions are gonna kind of lock into certain things, but.
Well,
But
then
make
let's
sure
go,
that the case.
let's skip to frontage zone
Mhm.
and just compare and contrast. Frontage zone,
Just a really quick question, the nomenclature of frontage, if you were talking about water.
Yeah.
Would be the
Yeah,
the length,
length, it would not be the area,
not the area.
yeah,
but you're changing that if it's not on water, it's now the area.
So we had a lot of discussion about this way back when.
Yeah.
And not surprising, because
It's
I
a really
think,
great point.
yeah, the original definition of frontage was a line, not an area. And so we created frontage zone to be specific, because that isn't an area of land.
right. Yeah, and that's, I do think it's a little confusing, and I tried to put a little thought in like, what other term could we use rather than to replace frontage with? Because I think that's, I mean, I use it all the time, like, oh yeah, your road frontage or your water frontage, like this lot has 200 feet of frontage. And it's like, well, if you're using these definitions, said it's an area, not a line, so. If we've got a better term, I would love it. But
I would say that it's the distance. Oh. The distance. It's not the distance.
Length.
The. Yeah, I actually don't agree with that definition at all. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I see it as what you were just saying and what you were saying, which is that it's
the line,
it's a line that lies on top of essentially the front lot line, or however that is actually defined, because it could be the edge of the pavement, the center of the road, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's the length of the lot along the primary frontage. How do you find frontage without using the word frontage?
well, and I'm just looking at this and the definition in the code currently is. The land area that lies between a building and a public or private road, right of way, an easement, a civic space, or water body, so. It currently means area, and I think frontage line is the. Although, no, because what I did was I took frontage line and made it. Basically that setback line, so it would be the plane of like the front of the building. That's the frontage line, because then you measure back from there
To get your frontage zone
to get your
setback.
frontage zone setback, and that's, so. This is like one of those things where like what we call it is important and we want it to be clear. But it's probably less, the more important thing is really the definitions, like what are we talking about? And I think probably the word frontage is not the best word. And we'll have to get like an English major or someone who's really versed in Latin to come in and be like, here's a good word that you could use, but.
If you have primary. Lot line, comma, front primary. That it has certain conditions on what that can be, why can't you just say that frontage is the.
Front lot
length
line.
of the lot line, comma, front, comma, primary. There you go.
Is, well. I understand, do we need to define it then? Like, is it just basically saying like, yeah, it's your.
It's the length of the front lot line,
Right,
that's all, and that has to be, if it's not an insular lot, that line has to be on a road. So that's road frontage. But I guess that means then, how do you have water frontage?
that's what I'm saying, like, if
Yeah.
we could just not have. I know.
You could have an
Yeah,
assumed.
I can't- Well, we could just not define, we don't need to define what frontage is, cause we can. When we're setting those standards, we've already got the primary front lot line, and you can say the primary front lot line has to be this long, or. We don't need to have another word that references that.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I feel like it's a commonly used word. Like,
Yeah,
when
unbelievable.
You don't
I
wanna
mean,
annex a term that has a different connotation.
Yeah.
And you know, that's,
That's exactly where my kind of discomfort with some of this is. It already is. I mean, right now in the code, frontage is the the land area that lies between the building and the
okay,
public or private. So I just kind of went with that because I think that the important thing that we need to nail down is frontage zone. And we could call it whatever we want, but because we should probably replace the word frontage with something else, and I just don't know, could be yard. Your primary yard, your secondary yard, your yard line, your primary yard line, that one doesn't work either, but
well, again, that, what I was thinking earlier when I was looking at definitions. The definition is only as useful as how it's applied in the rest of the code.
yeah,
So however it's applied in the rest of the code, that has to be what determines the language that you use.
you're right.
I mean, that's what's gonna drive your choice of words.
And that's why I wanna make sure we nail these down so that we can regulate. Because I know that the issue that I think that's been raised, and the reason that frontage came up was. And I think I can draw some of this, is how things relate to each other, how accessory buildings relate, where the main building mass relates to, where it lands in relation to other stuff. So if we're just like a regular rectangular lot, and you got your road here. So this is your primary frontage, like, we know that this is your right, I just did it,
Yeah.
primary frontage, but.
surveyors, real estate, road frontage.
But so if this is your primary front lot line, which, is gonna be your road frontage, whatever, but. And if you have a building on here. We know this is your setback.
Yep.
To your main building mass.
Mhm.
And then the way that what I call the frontage line was basically this.
Yeah.
I think we want to accommodate. Massing components and architectural components that extend in here, possibly. And there's also this frontage setback that basically goes. From the front, it's an additional setback that you don't put your mechanical equipment in, there's certain standards that you just can't do things here. Also, your accessory buildings, might be, the setback may be based off of this rather than this, so we say, oh, you got a 5-foot accessory building setback, well, it's 5 feet from your. What I'm calling frontage line, and again, we can call that term, we can come up with. Kind of from anywhere, but I think this is an important, this is an important thing to define. Whatever we want to call it. So that we can use that.
That line that touches the front of the house.
Yeah.
That's not the setback line?
No, that's the primary frontage line.
Right.
As it is currently used.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we've got. Setbacks, I mean, I guess maybe that's the route that we go to, is like have your primary front setback.
And then secondary.
And
Which what, that stacks or staggers your ADU,
right,
cause you don't want it up, you don't want it to meet the front setback, you want it staggered back.
right, I mean, right, it's maybe in some places it's okay if it does, but I think we usually want. We need to figure out what that line is, what we call it, and that maybe it is primary front setback line.
And then the second one is your secondary.
No, because your secondary, I think it would get a little bit confusing, because in my head. You have your primary frontage, you've got your secondary frontage, so if you had a secondary setback. I think it would be from your secondary frontage. Rather than, we can call it something else.
So the overhang on the front. Right,
That you're talking about this, from here to here.
Yeah, isn't that going to now determine that that's your setback?
I think that's what we gotta kind of.
Let's say it's a vestibule.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
right.
setback, it's in,
So,
But it's not the main building mass, which is what the setback is for.
Yeah.
We went through this also.
Yeah,
So. I just looked it up. This is really interesting. Frontage is the boundary between a plot of land or a building and the road onto which the plot or building fronts.
well, that. Building, I understand, but the plot of land is a little bit.
But it's defined as the boundary between.
Oh, the boundary, okay. Frontage.
The frontage is the boundary between the plot of land. Or the building and the road onto which the plot or building fronts.
You draw a line, how do you draw a line in the plot of land to the road?
Well,
Right.
so thinking about it, it's different than the lot width. Because the lot width is a measurement along. Along the frontage. But the frontage is the boundary between the lot line. And the lot or building itself.
Well, yeah, well, this is where it's. So you basically, it's this whole thing.
No. No. We gotta go back to Euclidean geometry.
Hey,
It's-
John,
Yes, it's literally a line, breadthless length.
So,
Straight from the perpendicular to the road back to the house.
No.
yeah.
would you like a marker?
It
Are you saying it's this line that's,
it is that line,
Yeah, that's frontage,
that's the frontage.
yeah,
yeah,
and I think that's from the conversation we're having now, I think that's what we want frontage to mean is that.
And so that other line we were talking about could be the road frontage.
This line up here,
Or the line that's on the very front of the lot.
this,
Keep going. There.
well, this is the other side of the road,
Oh, that's it. I'm sorry.
so this, like, this is, if this.
I get it now. I'm sorry. I missed that. That's the road frontage.
Yeah,
Correct.
so the reason for
Because-
having a separate definition for frontage and lot line. Is when you get into really funky shaped lots. Now, if it's normal lots that are just square rectilinear
Yes.
lots, all these things lie on top of each other,
Yeah,
right? So, I actually like the word boundary. It's the boundary between the lot and the road.
right,
That's frontage.
yeah, which I think is. I'm trying to think of a situation where it wouldn't be. It's basically the primary front lot line.
Yes, it
Unless
is.
that's in the middle of the road because it's from the
That's-
road to the house.
That's a possibility, and or if it's a funky road. And the lot follows and you have a definition for lot width. For example, that doesn't measure along the frontage, but instead measures from the midpoint of the side lot lines.
So if we do have a weird road that does that and blah. It's like, yeah, whatever, like that.
Yeah.
This is your frontage,
The frontage is the boundary,
which I think would also be the primary front lot line, assuming that this is the only road. front.
right,
correct?
we can all get around that one.
Yes.
And then width is gonna be,
Back there.
could
Yeah,
be back
could
here,
be
it
back
also could be, I guess, maybe there. But
So it's like a tie line on a survey. That,
I'm not familiar with that.
the width, yeah, it's like from this corner to this. corner.
Oh, okay. I
yeah,
see what
so
you're
it
saying.
wouldn't take in all that,
Yeah, right.
yeah, because on a survey, you'll see
For
it
the
straight,
width,
yeah, tie.
But it would take in that for the frontage.
Right,
Right,
so you'd sell the water frontage as 2,100 square feet.
Yeah.
Right.
The
But
tie
it's a straight
line, the straight line is
1,500.
1,800, yeah, 1,600.
Right.
Right.
And so I assume, I'm just trying to think of where this, because if you have lots that like, kind of spread out like that.
Yeah.
The lot width, you're gonna wanna measure back here rather than here, cause then this is gonna be wider, so like if you're at an end of a cul-de-sac or something, right?
Mills Road is like that.
Yes,
Yeah, or yeah,
Yeah.
if you're on a, just a weird turn, but still frontage is your primary lot line.
for all intents and purposes, but I think for the definition. I don't know about you guys, but for me, it actually clarifies it, by
Boundary.
calling it a boundary
Yeah,
between the lot and the road.
There you go.
and the road, okay, I'm just trying to think of. I guess, the thing that I'm struggling with is, I assume that's what the front lot line is too.
Unless the front lot line is in the middle of that curved road, in
Well,
which case the frontage is on the edge of the curved
but
road.
would that, according to the definition of, primary front lot line? It's any lot line that abuts the road other than the primary. Road, which I guess gets into this, that now there is that weird situation of like. If you own to the middle of the road. Is this your primary front lot line, or is this your primary front lot line?
The one in the middle of the road is your primary front lot line, but your frontage is the second one.
Correct.
I think that that's, well, the way that this definition is any lot line that abuts the road. So that one in the middle of the road doesn't abut it. But I do think that makes sense what you're saying, because if we've got a lot line, like the lot line is basically the extent of.
Yes.
Right, so you would think that should be. Cause lot lines are what demarcate your.
Yeah, it's your boundary.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 8:20. I'm gonna make a recommendation. This has been a good conversation. It's very confusing.
Yeah.
So. To clarify a little bit, I'd like to request that maybe we come back next month with some diagrams.
Yep.
And we continue on frontage.
Yeah.
So, and we have the diagrams. And then we, instead of doing this,
Mhm.
So you have a diagram, line A
Line
is
A,
the
yeah.
boundary.
yeah.
Line B
This is
is
the frontage line, this is the primary frontage zone, this is setback line, this, you know what I mean?
there you go.
Yeah, my hesitation with that is like when you point, you're like, oh yeah, that's what it is, it makes it kind of easy, and then when the definitions. Like, you want the definitions to work whether there's a diagram or not,
Yes,
so you can get real dialed in.
yes,
But I think that we can, I'm happy to make the diagrams.
I don't want the diagrams to be the definition,
Right,
but the diagrams need to
Example.
aid in understanding the definition.
yeah. Okay.
This is why we need a visual reference guide.
So
My laptop's dead, sorry.
let me request that if you all go through this and have thoughts and concerns or comments. And anybody from the public is welcome to do it, share them with me, sooner the better. I'm gonna try and put more thought into especially frontage, maybe come up with a better word than frontage. For the area.
Yeah.
And then I will try and incorporate any thoughts or comments that you give me and come up with some diagrams.
Thank you. That's a lot.
Well, I'd like to use my survey in order to provide yourself with a very odd shaped lot to try to define.
Oh, we've got some doozies in
Two.
Newcastle,
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
Either way, it's a great opportunity to extend legislative. Sorry, I'm tired, man.
Yeah, no, you're good, you're good. I want to get home, I'm starving. All right, are we good continuing this next month?
Absolutely.
Do we have anything else on the agenda? Because I can't see it.
No, well, there's public comment.
Do we have any public comments?
Probably had plenty.
Thank you for all your public comments already.
I do have a couple things just to mention. One, I shared. You should have access to your Google Drive. I shared all of the ordinances. I put them in there.
Yep.
And I also shared, I think it was all of the meeting. Like, all the meeting,
files.
Everything.
So that you can go back and see whatever's there and what's coming.
Yeah. It's great.
So that's there. And then I have 4 meeting minutes for you to sign. 2 that, well, no, just 3. This one that you approved today,
Can't do the one from June.
can't do the one from June. And then I got 2 others that were approved, but just never signed.
Great. All right. So don't leave before you sign. If you can sign. Otherwise, without objection. Meeting adjourned. 8:22. 8:20.